How many times a day do you see picture-perfect lives, blissful smiles, and pronouncements of joy scrolling across your screen? In our carefully curated online world, it's easy to feel the pressure to project an image of happiness, even when it doesn't reflect the reality of our everyday lives. Real happiness isn't about perfectly filtered photos or witty captions. True happiness, the kind that resonates deep within us, is about living a life aligned with our values, cultivating meaningful connections, and experiencing a sense of peace and contentment, even amidst life's inevitable challenges. So, how can we tell if we're truly happy or simply living behind a carefully constructed facade of happiness? Let's explore 7 signs that might indicate you're not as happy as you think you are. By recognizing these signs, we can begin to chip away at the mask and start living more authentically and wholeheartedly. Have you ever found yourself scrolling through social media, comparing your life to the carefully curated highlight reels of others? Maybe you start to feel inadequate, envious, or like you're not measuring up. This constant comparison, my friends, is a slippery slope that leads us further and further away from our own authentic happiness. When we're caught in the comparison trap, we're not truly seeing ourselves or others. We're judging ourselves based on external measures of success, beauty, or achievement, rather than appreciating our own unique qualities and contributions. We minimize our own accomplishments, thinking, well, it's not as impressive as what they're doing. We berate ourselves for our perceived shortcomings, focusing on what we lack instead of celebrating how far we've come. We forget that everyone is fighting their own battles, facing their own challenges, and that the perfectly curated images we see online often mask the messy, imperfect realities of being human. This constant comparison steals our joy, leaving us feeling inadequate, anxious, and disconnected from ourselves and others. It's a recipe for unhappiness, plain and simple. So how do we break free from this trap? It starts with awareness. Notice when you're falling into the comparison game. Instead of focusing on what you lack, shift your attention to what you appreciate about yourself and your life. Celebrate your accomplishments, big and small. Practice gratitude for the people and experiences that bring you joy. Remember, you are on your own unique journey, and comparing yourself to others is like comparing apples and oranges. Here's a hard truth. We all experience unhappiness at some point in our lives. It's part of the human experience. But what separates those who cultivate genuine happiness from those who struggle is their willingness to acknowledge, explore, and learn from their unhappiness. Ignoring our unhappiness, pretending it doesn't exist, or numbing ourselves to its presence only allows it to fester and grow. It's like ignoring a small leak in the roof. Over time, that small leak can turn into a major problem, causing significant damage. Think about a time when you felt a flicker of unhappiness, a whisper of discontent. Did you acknowledge those feelings? Did you explore their root causes? Or did you brush them aside, hoping they would simply disappear? But when we have the courage to lean into our unhappiness, to get curious about what it's trying to teach us, we empower ourselves to make positive changes in our lives. We create space for healing, growth, and ultimately greater happiness. We live in a culture that glorifies busyness. Being busy is often seen as a badge of honor, a sign of productivity and importance. But what if I told you that constant busyness could actually be a sign of unhappiness? Think about it. When we're constantly on the go, rushing from one thing to the next, we rarely have time to slow down, to connect with ourselves and others, or to simply be present in the moment. We become human doings instead of human beings. This constant busyness can be a way of avoiding uncomfortable emotions or thoughts. It's a distraction from the things that might be causing us unhappiness. We fill our schedules to the brim, convincing ourselves that we don't have time to address the underlying issues that are keeping us from experiencing true joy. So, how do we escape the myth of busyness? It starts with being intentional about how we spend our time. Take a look at your schedule and ask yourself, what can I let go of? What activities drain my energy? What brings me joy and nourishment? Make time for the things that matter most to you, even if it means saying no to things that don't. Give yourself permission to rest, recharge, and reconnect with yourself. Our bodies are incredibly wise. They send us signals when something is out of balance, when we're not taking care of ourselves, or when we're not addressing underlying emotional or psychological issues. And often these signals manifest as physical symptoms. Headaches, stomach aches, muscle tension, insomnia, digestive problems, these can all be signs that we're not as happy as we think we are. When we're chronically stressed, anxious, or unhappy, our bodies go into survival mode. Our nervous system is constantly on high alert, releasing stress hormones that take a toll on our physical health. Ignoring these physical symptoms is like ignoring a flashing warning light on the dashboard of our car. We might be able to ignore it for a while, but eventually it's going to catch up with us. So what can we do? First and foremost, listen to your body. Pay attention to any physical symptoms you're experiencing. Are there any patterns? Do certain symptoms arise after stressful events or during times of emotional turmoil? Once you've started to tune into your body's signals, you can begin to address the underlying causes of your unhappiness. We might isolate ourselves from others, avoid intimacy, or sabotage our relationships before they even have a chance to blossom. This difficulty connecting with others can be a major sign of unhappiness. When we're not happy with ourselves, when we're carrying around unresolved trauma or emotional baggage, it can be challenging to let others in. We might fear judgment, rejection, or vulnerability. But here's the thing: connection is essential for our well-being. It's what gives our lives meaning and purpose. It's what helps us feel loved, supported, and seen. So how do we cultivate deeper connections in our lives? It starts with being willing to be vulnerable. This means showing up authentically in our relationships, sharing our true selves, even the messy and imperfect parts. It also means being present in our interactions with others, putting down our phones, making eye contact, and truly listening to what the other person has to say. Our comfort zones are tricky things. They're familiar, safe, and predictable. But they can also be a prison, keeping us from experiencing the fullness of life. When we're resistant to change, when we cling tightly to the familiar, we limit our potential for growth, joy, and fulfillment. Think about a time when you resisted change. Maybe it was a job opportunity that scared you, a chance to travel to a new place, or even just trying a new restaurant. What were you afraid of? What were you trying to protect yourself from? Often, our resistance to change stems from fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of not being good enough. But here's the thing: growth and change, while often uncomfortable, are essential for our happiness. They challenge us, push us outside our comfort zones, and help us discover new possibilities. So how do we embrace change and step outside our comfort zones? It starts with small steps. Identify one small change you'd like to make in your life. It could be as simple as trying a new hobby, taking a different route to work, or reaching out to someone you admire. Once you've identified your small change, break it down into even smaller, more manageable steps. This will make it feel less daunting and more achievable. In a world that constantly tells us we need more, it's easy to lose sight of what we already have. We become so focused on what's missing from our lives that we fail to appreciate the abundance that surrounds us. This lack of gratitude, my friends, is a surefire path to unhappiness. When we're constantly focused on what we lack, we're essentially telling ourselves that we're not enough. We're reinforcing a scarcity mindset that keeps us feeling dissatisfied, resentful, and unhappy. But here's the good news: gratitude is a practice. It's like a muscle that gets stronger the more we use it. And the more we practice gratitude, the more we shift our perspective from one of scarcity to one of abundance. So, how do we cultivate more gratitude in our lives? It starts with noticing and appreciating the small things: the warmth of the sun on our skin, the taste of our morning coffee, the sound of laughter from loved ones. As we've explored these 7 signs, it's clear that true happiness is an inside job. It's not about achieving some picture-perfect ideal, but about cultivating a deep sense of contentment, connection, and gratitude for the life we're living. It's about embracing our imperfections, acknowledging our difficult emotions, and choosing courage over comfort. The journey to happiness isn't always easy, but it's a journey worth taking. So I invite you to reflect on these signs. Are there any areas in your life where you might be holding yourself back from experiencing true happiness? What small changes can you make today to start living a more authentic, joyful, and fulfilling life?